Imagine two people sitting across from each other at a dinner table. Both are 35 years old, both are intelligent, both work hard, and both earn exactly $90,000 a year. From the outside, their financial lives look identical, but 10 years from now, one of them will have quietly accumulated several $100,000 in net worth, and the other will have almost nothing saved beyond what sits in a checking account waiting to be spent. The difference between them has almost nothing to do with discipline, intelligence, or effort. It has everything to do with where their money comes from and how the economic system treats different types of income in fundamentally different ways. Most people are never taught that not all income is equal. From the time we are children, the story we absorb is a simple and logical one. You work hard, you get paid, and if you work hard enough and get paid enough, you will eventually be wealthy. It is a comforting story, and it contains just enough truth to feel accurate. But underneath it lies a structural reality that the majority of working adults never fully examine, which is that salary income, the kind most people depend on entirely, is the most taxed, most exposed, and least efficient form of wealth generation available in a modern economy. To understand why, you have to start with how salary is treated by the tax code. When you earn a dollar through employment, that dollar is subject to federal income tax, state income tax in most places, Social Security tax, and Medicare tax. Depending on your bracket and your state, this can reduce your earned dollar to somewhere between 60 and 70 cents before it ever reaches your bank account. This is not a political statement. It is simply the mechanical reality of how wage income is classified and taxed. The system was not designed with malicious intent, but it was designed. And the design treats labor income far more aggressively than it treats capital income. Capital gains, the profit earned when an asset increases in value, is taxed at a significantly lower rate than ordinary income. Long-term capital gains for most middle-class earners are taxed at 15% federally, compared to marginal income tax rates that can reach 22, 24, or even 32% for the same income level. This differential exists across nearly every developed economy and has been a consistent feature of tax policy for decades. What it means in practice is that a dollar earned by owning something is structurally worth more after tax than a dollar earned by doing something. This is not a loophole or an exploit. It is the foundational architecture of the system. Beyond taxation, there is a deeper mathematical problem with salary dependence that has to do with time. A salary is a linear income model. You trade a fixed number of hours for a fixed amount of money, and the relationship between your input and your output remains roughly proportional. If you want to double your salary income, you must roughly double your output, either by working more hours, developing more valuable skills, or moving into a higher-paying role, all of which take years and carry no guarantee. Assets, by contrast, operate on a non-linear model. A dollar invested in a diversified index fund does not require your attention to grow. It compounds quietly, and the mathematical nature of compounding means that growth accelerates over time rather than remaining flat. This is the core inefficiency of salary dependency. Not that salaries are bad, but that they require continuous human input to continue generating output, while assets generate output independent of your time. The moment you stop working, salary income stops completely. Assets do not follow that rule. This distinction becomes increasingly significant as you age, as your energy changes, and as the economy shifts in ways that can make specific skills suddenly less valuable than they were before. There is also a psychological dimension to this that behavioral economists have studied extensively. Salary income arrives in predictable, regular intervals, which creates a cognitive pattern of consumption that is almost automatic. When money arrives reliably every 2 weeks, the brain tends to treat it as a renewable resource, adjusting spending upward to meet income rather than treating the gap between income and spending as the actual wealth-building mechanism. This is partly why studies consistently show that increasing income alone does not reliably increase net worth. Because the psychological response to higher income often involves proportionally higher spending, a phenomenon known as lifestyle inflation, which effectively neutralizes the financial advantage of earning more. People who build wealth through assets experience a different psychological relationship with money. Because asset returns are variable, delayed, and often invisible in the short term, they are less likely to trigger immediate consumption responses. The money feels less spendable, not because of discipline, but because of how and when it arrives. This is one of the underappreciated structural advantages of asset-based income. It is psychologically harder to spend before it compounds. Historically, this dynamic has always existed, but it has intensified meaningfully over the past 4 decades. Since the early 1980s, the share of national income going to labor has declined relative to the share going to capital, a shift documented across virtually every major developed economy. This means that the economy as a whole has been gradually moving in a direction where owning produces more relative return than working, and that trend has compounded over time in ways that are now visible in the widening gap between wage growth and asset price growth. None of this means that earning a salary is a mistake or that employment is a trap. For most people, salary is the necessary foundation, the source of capital that can eventually be redirected into assets. The insight is not to abandon salary income, but to stop treating it as the destination. The salary is the input, the assets are the engine. And the earlier that distinction becomes clear, the more time the engine has to run. The 2 people at that dinner table both earned the same income. But one of them understood early enough to matter that the goal was never to earn more. It was to convert what they earned into something that could earn on its own. That conversion, repeated consistently over time, is the actual mechanism behind most durable wealth. It is not dramatic, it is not fast, and it does not require extraordinary income. It requires understanding the difference between money that arrives because you showed up and money that arrives because you built something that works while you don't. That is the quiet, structural truth that sits beneath the surface of most financial success stories. Not luck, not genius, not timing, but the early recognition that in a modern economy, what you own will almost always outperform what you earn.